If you are a top performer, you may want to entertain the idea that you have no idea what's possible when it comes to internal and mental relaxation. In the last 7 years, I've worked with over 1,200 people. It was 40 weeks of retreats. That's almost a year of retreat time. These were normal people. These weren't monks. These were parents and engineers, coaches or writers. Almost all of them were skeptics. It turns out that these 1,200 people share common patterns. In this video, I'm going to share with you what those patterns are. I'm going to share with you exactly what I wished somebody had told me when I started. These common patterns predict places where people succeed. They also predict places where people get tripped up, even the most experienced of meditators. The value of having 1,200 people go through 40 retreats means that we have access to a pipeline that allows us to learn things that is very difficult to do in any other way. And the facilitation team works actively behind the scenes and between retreats to come up with new tools to support the next batch of students better than the last. This R&D pipeline, effectively, has led to more and more sophisticated ways of meeting students where they're at over time. One of the frameworks we use by which to do that, we call the 5 archetypes. We break them down into a few different names. They're the controllers and strivers, the fortresses and the sentries, and the escapists. The controllers are folks who would rather run their life like corporate KPIs. They're analyzing everything, looking to seek control via that analysis. The strivers find ways, unfortunately, to turn just about everything into a form of self-criticism. The escapists look actively for delights all around them to avoid what they really don't want to look at. The fortresses have found a way over time to sort of clench down so hard that they've walled themselves off from just about any form of emotion. And the sentries clench down not before emotion strikes, but at any sign that it starts to really pick up speed, including things like gratitude ramping up into an altered state. The 5 archetypes is one of many set of tools that we use to try to get sharp about pattern matching and meeting students where they're at. What I think it illustrates, even better than the fact that there's a few patterns that people hit in their internal barriers, is that there's a common through line between everybody. Each of these folks has learned to clench down on some flavor of emotion that they don't want to look at. And it's learning to unclench and to spot that makes all the difference. Let's have a look next at what separates those who break through. The biggest preventer of progress is over-efforting. This is intuitive. Efforting comes, often physically or mentally, with a form of clenching. Whether you're literally clenching your muscles or doing the equivalent in your mind, you're putting a block on, most likely, an emotion you're avoiding, something you don't want to quite look at. Exactly what the nervous system needs to unlearn in order for you to sink into the spacious and open meditation states that can be so powerful. It's often the highest achievers that struggle with this unfortunate dilemma the most. This makes a ton of sense. The highest achievers have effectively learned, they've been trained to effort over years and years in a certain way. Imagine if you are the top 10% of your craft in anything in the world. You've dedicated years, maybe decades to getting here. And at every step along the way, you probably had to apply effort in order to get to the next step. Your environment got more competitive, and so you doubled down. You put a premium on things like grit or discipline. You learned to become the top 10% in efforting in a certain way. And in the process, became the bottom 10%, at learning to undo that mental effort. I know this because I was the king of over-efforting. On my first retreat, I clenched down and efforted so hard. I put such tremendous effort into 10.5 hours a day, sitting perfectly still, tight mental concentration, getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning, that I hurt myself trying to sit still like a statue, and had 3 migraines in 8 days. I did not know that it was possible to mentally clench to the point of inducing migraines, or to self-criticize to the point where I couldn't sleep at all. The success that I eventually found on that retreat required me doing the exact opposite. I had to ask, what would it look like to not just have half the effort, but something like 1/100th the effort, a completely different paradigm. I also had to find ways to spot even the tiniest shreds, the fastest and most fleeting forms of self-criticism, and catch them before they turned into something deeper, and welcome them. I would literally say the phrase, "Come here, my friend," every time I even felt a little flicker of self-criticism. These two things, stopping effort and stopping criticism, made all the difference for me, and they made all the difference for hundreds of students that we've seen go through our retreats. Conversely, those who make progress fastest do at least 3 things differently. They run their own experiments, And they do so basically as playfully as possible. You can almost tell when someone is going to succeed on retreat if they show up with a glint in their eye like Sherlock Holmes. Every failure becomes another source of curiosity. Every form of criticism becomes, oh, there's a little game to be played. Let me move the goals and figure out why that happened. How can I make it so that I relax instead of criticize in the future? They're taking their curiosity not just from inside the meditation, but when they're in the shower, when they're going for a walk, when they're eating food. All of these places are just as rich territory for thinking about the dynamics between attention and emotion as when you're formally sitting. In fact, you can often do little experiments where if you're meditating and then you're relieved that you're going to take a break, you can immediately ask, why is that? What on earth am I doing in my mind that when I sit down to do this meditation, it is less fun than having a break? The whole point of meditating is to relax and enjoy myself. And so if it gets to a point where it's more fun to have a break, there's some shift right there that you can look at and say, that's a mental move that I'm inadvertently taking off the cushion, but I could be bringing into my sit itself. These kinds of things, taking a deep sense of curiosity and playfulness to experiments, both inside meditation and outside meditation, and treating failure as something that just sparks more curiosity, are the hallmarks of the fastest of students. All of these are forms of agency. That agency, in the very fastest of students, is then applied in one more way, perhaps even more important than the rest of them. They take that agency, they take that curiosity, and they apply it to the emotion that they've been avoiding. They go actively looking for the most uncomfortable of things, and they treat that like a playful Sherlock Holmes. No self-criticism involved. Our slowest learners, by contrast, often do basically the opposite. They have subtle self-criticism disguised as a discipline. They have emotional blocks they don't know are there, and they have a form of learned helplessness that prevents them from taking the agency to every nook and cranny of their experience. The people who break through aren't the ones who try the hardest. They're the ones who get curious the fastest. Okay, so let's imagine that you have listened to this video and magically, in a flash, you have solved all of your curiosity and self-compassion problems. You are now, at every twist and turn in your own meditation, discovering new things, and you're both a kid in a candy shop, just playful and excited, and like Sherlock Holmes on the hunt. You're, as we like to say on retreat, reflect like a scientist, play like a child. All of this happens, and suddenly, for the first time, you're making real progress. You're letting go. You're finding little sparks of gratitude turn into bonfires or start to take off into things that remind you of some of your most loving memories. You may start to find a peace in meditation that begins to feel like it's just going to go on infinitely. That there is a rest at the end of this road deeper than you thought was possible. When this happens, you're about to hit trouble. This happens to everybody. Once the glimpses begin to really take life, there's a very natural human response. You clench because you want it. It feels so good. Finally, after this thing, or maybe quickly, this thing that you picked up for the first time was starting to deliver genuine emotion. Gratitude on the order of loving memories, or peace on the order of deep, deep rest. When this happens, and you clench, it's gonna wall you off. It's gonna evaporate. That is a sign of progress. It feels like regression, and it surprises just about everybody. But for us on a facilitation team that's now seen so many students, we know that this is just the video game leveling up. You have learned an extremely important lesson. You've started to spot in your nervous system little bits of tension and release them at a subtler level than you ever had before. And now you have an opportunity to level up even further. In order for these glimpses to become reliable experiences, meaningful, big experiences, you're gonna have to learn to let go of even them. It turns out the skill that gets you into deep meditation is the same skill that gets you into deeper. You're gonna have to let go even of what worked last time. And this brings me to the finding underneath all 1,200 students. If any of this resonates with you, or maybe it seems oddly familiar, like you're being called to it, we've built a community designed for people like you. It's called Jhourney, and those 1,200 students that we've had on retreat is exactly what we do. We ask students to show up, to think about how they can be experimenting and playful in their own mind. We point out ways in which they may be self-critical and they don't realize it. We point out aspects of learned helplessness that are often invisible. And then we point out when they think they're regressing, but in fact, they're doing great and they're making great progress. We internally do the same thing ourselves. We treat each new retreat as an experiment. We treat each new student as an opportunity to find ways to meet them exactly where they're at and learn how we can support the next student. And the whole thing, we think, is very playful. This community, it's called Jhourney. We would love to have you. Having watched over 1,000 people go through this process, we internally like to say it all boils down to one simple idea. This simple idea is so important that we actually talk about it in 3 different ways to highlight the subtly different facets to the same thing. The first way is we say it's about awareness and love all the way down. The second is we like to say it's about spotting and releasing mental tension. And the third is what we call recursive self-acceptance. Awareness and love all the way down is the idea that if you don't know where you're stuck, if you feel that there's some sort of plateau or there's some sort of tension in the system, but you don't know exactly what it is, on what topic or on what emotion or where in the body, that you have what we call an awareness problem. The game is to go be Sherlock Holmes to figure out exactly where is that tension that you don't realize you're experiencing. If you do know, then you actually have what we call a love problem. You've not learned to find a way to accept that part in your experience. For the more technically oriented or for the engineers, the phrase spot and release mental tension may actually be more useful. It sounds a little less poetic and a bit more precise, but it gets at the same thing. You're looking not at a metaphor, but something very particular in your nervous system that feels like a contraction. It could be somewhere in the body, it could be somewhere in the sort of in your mental space, but there's a subtle feeling, and once you nail what that subtle feeling is, once you get familiar at how it operates and what it feels like, you've now moved from a spotting problem to a releasing problem. You follow these 2 directions. You either have a spot problem or a release problem, or you either have an awareness problem or a love problem. And it's incredibly orienting. Not only is it sort of the skill that all meditators are practicing to effectively virtuoso levels, it's the thing that lets you know what you should do next. The third way that we like to talk about it, recursive self-acceptance. This is for those who can really identify with self-criticism. It refers to the idea that any shred of self-criticism, anything that resembles the opposite of self-acceptance, is something you're going to want to turn towards, you're going to want to catch, you're going to want to gently accept. And then when that's hard, or you can't do that, you're going to accept that, and so on and so forth, all the way back. These phrases, awareness and love all the way down, spot and release mental tension, or recursive self-acceptance, they're all the same thing. They point at the exact same idea. And this idea is what meditation is all about. Once you get good at this skill, you'll discover you're not the only one who notices. We like to say, calm scales. People feel good around people who feel good inside. One of our favorite things when we get notes from alumni, shortly after a retreat, perhaps within an hour of arriving home, and their partner says something like, "You're a little different. You're more present." Or 2 weeks later, when a colleague spontaneously tells them, "I think you're happier. You're more at ease." One of my favorite stories was from an email we got with someone on their plane ride home. And it turns out that there was a crying baby right behind them that cried the entire plane ride. They had specific memories in the past where a crying baby led to this clenching or dreading of being in such an environment, trapped in a metal tube going through the sky. And instead, they began meditating with their eye mask, where every cry from the baby was just another invitation to soften and to compassion. They wrote in their email that their eye mask was drenched. It was literally dripping by the end of the plane ride. I'm not promising you tears, but I am promising you that if you take meditation seriously, you're going to find extraordinary things about your inner world, much more agency than you thought was possible, and a subtlety to your inner experience that makes all kinds of new things possible. I'm 7 years in, 7 years after being the king of over-efforting. This journey of spotting and releasing mental tension or awareness and love all the way down, this quality of releasing or some sort of unknowing, some letting go, some sort of gratitude or surrender, has just been one big journey in helping me relax and come home. Come home in ways that I didn't realize were possible. That is what I think meditation is all about.